Welcome to Show Me Sports Legacies. Today we're going to talk about tennis. Tennis anyone. Over 50 years of tennis in Trenton. And the father of tennis in Trenton is pretty well known, Carl Carpenter. He was involved in all of it. Wasn't long after that he handed off the leadership of the boys program specifically to Mike Bosley, who then went on to be the Trenton High School boys tennis coach for 35 years and 29 years with the girls teams. And you just can't identify two guys better with the program. All led to 2021 ceremony where the courts were named as the Carl Carpenter and Mike Bosley tennis courts. We're going to have some clips from that. First thing we have is Stan Perry reading the plaque that adorns the courts.
It says, "Welcome to the Carl Carpenter and Mike Bosley courts. These courts were built in 1973 and dedicated in 2021 to honor the great contributions made by these two coaches, fathers, and mentors for teaching and inspiring the love of tennis to this community, with Carl Carpenter's signature and Mike Bosley's signature."
This was originally broadcast on KTTN-FM here in Trenton, and I want to thank John Anthony for giving us the rights to replay this and include it in this episode, so we appreciate that very much. So here's just a little history, and you're going to hear a voice from the past, because this is my buddy Mike Bosley.
48 years since the start of tennis for us, so we're coming up on 50. So we wasn't just a flash in the pan, as I say. I started in the summer recreation program, Mobley Park, in I think 1972. So, and there's been 64 boys and girls teams that I've coached. So 29 girls and 35 boys. So here we are. I'm proud of those accomplishments and honor.
That's a long time. Loved kids. He was always available.
Yeah, being present in the moment for all of those kids, not only during the seasons that he coached, but on those summer nights when those lights were on and you would drive by the courts and Coach Bosley and Coach Carpenter might be out there playing. They might be out there playing against a couple former students. They might be out there playing against a couple current students. And just because they love the game and wanted to make it accessible for the kids of the community, we got a tradition in Trenton that really has stood the test of time and really kind of unique because Trenton is, for the size of school, has a tennis program that not a lot of schools Trenton size have. Created a legacy, created a tradition that really stood the test of time because of those two gentlemen and all the players that they coached.
Now this is kind of a fun one here. We've got Carl Carpenter telling a story.
I used to tell the number one player, if you want to be successful, if you want to win in your matches, you've got to play well enough to beat me. And it wasn't too long until that was happening. They made me eat my words. But I want to remind people, and I don't know, the first person that beat me, I bet he doesn't know that. I tried to keep it a secret, but it was Stan Perry.
Is that why you haven't talked to me in 50 years?
Well, I thought before that even that left-handers ought to be restricted to the back courts. And that certainly reinforced my thinking.
Love the interaction between his former players.
And one of the coolest things about hearing those clips is the bond that those guys have created with their coaches, talking probably like they talked back in the 70s and talking in 2021 about 50 years. And that's really, really cool. And that's what you want with sports. And that's what you want, especially with high school sports, is creating relationships and seeing if those can stand the test of time.
Okay, today we're here talking with Carl Carpenter, who has been called the father of tennis in Trenton, Missouri, by one Stan Perry, who's also going to join us a little bit later. We got some guys coming in to talk about the beginnings of the Trenton tennis program And Carl started that program when he came to Trenton in 1966 as new junior high principal. He was a respected disciplinarian as a principal, often having a positive impact on the direction and lives of his students, and his philosophy of integrity and hard work found a sports home in the game of tennis. He started the tennis program at Trenton and coached both boys and girls teams. Launching that program, in 1975, Mr. Carpenter turned over the program leadership to Mike Bosley while retaining his role as the girls' coach until 1978. Many years later, in 2021, the Carl Carpenter and Mike Bosley courts were renamed in honor of their impactful and continuing legacy. Success and wins, success in life, and love of the game. So, Carl, I'm going to start off with some questions, and we always like to find out the backstory. And so you grew up in rural New York State. What was life on the farm like? And was there any sports involved in that at all, or was it mostly work and school?
No, we had lots of sports activities. We had basketball and played a little baseball. Did a lot of swimming. My dad liked to swim, and lots of times after we'd worked in the field all day, we'd head for a nearby lake and take a swim rather than take a bath in the bathtub.
So you did some organized sports when you got high school age. I understand you were a basketball player.
Yes, such as.
Such as? Well, there's no film, so you can tell us anything you want to tell us about what kind of player you were.
Well, I was not much of a basketball player. Never was. I liked the game very well. Played it even after I got up into being what should have been an adult, but I still liked the kids' games. Remembered playing in the Adams gym with junior high kids and older kids up and down the court. Really enjoyed myself.
Now tell me what brought you to the Midwest. I mean, what path took you from New York State to Graceland College?
Well, it was our church college, first of all. My folks were quite interested in all four of us. I have 3 siblings. All 4 of us, we all went to Graceland. At that time, it was only a junior college, but we all 4 went there and then transferred to other colleges or universities to complete our degree.
And you went to Central Missouri?
Central Missouri, yes.
When you got to Graceland, you had not figured out what your life path was and what your major was going to be. And I understand there was a moment when you could have gone left and went right as you began your educational career. Tell us about that.
Well, I'm not sure I made the right choice yet, but when we were fresh recruits there at Graceland, they had us all as a student center. They had certain buildings and rooms designated for certain programs. And they would call out a program such as accounting and give you the building and the room, and you were to go there for scheduling purposes. I was sitting there not knowing what I was going to do. And of course, they did it in alphabetical order, and agriculture came up pretty quickly. And I got up and walked out of the building with the group that was interested in agriculture. I got to the door, and just outside, I turned around and walked back and decided, no, I didn't want to do that, but I didn't know what I was going to do. But I went back and sat down where I was. It wasn't too long till education came up. And I got up with that group. I went where I was designated to go with that one and followed through. That's how I happened to get into education.
So you finish up your 2 years at Graceland. You go to Central Missouri. How did you prepared to be in the education field? What was your first job? What school district did you
My
start
first job was at Garden City, Missouri, a little town that a lot of Missourians probably never heard of. It's on Highway 7 south of Harrisonville, and between Harrisonville and Clinton. My wife and I both taught there 1 year.
When you went to Windsor then, you took on starting a tennis program. Talk about how you found the game of tennis, how you started playing? Was it just casually and it developed into a passion, or was it something right away you thought you'd want to do?
Oh, it grew on me. I knew nothing about tennis to start with, but I got hooked up with a roommate from all places, Davidson, Oklahoma. I bet there's not one person in 100 that could tell me anything about where Davidson, Oklahoma is. Way down in the southwest corner of the state, almost to the Texas border. Little dusty town. But there was this guy that came to Graceland from Davidson, Oklahoma. I don't think they even had tennis courts in Davidson. But he wanted to play tennis. He went out for the team at Graceland, and, well, he made the carrying team. In other words, he did a lot of carrying. And
carrying the bags and the rackets and things. Yeah.
And he got to play occasionally. But he was a natural athlete. He was a good athlete. He and I have played lots of sports, and he would almost always beat me. But I always came back for more, and I kept saying to myself, I'm going to get this guy one of these days. And once in a while I did, but not very often. And he played there at Graceland for 2 years, and we both transferred to Warrensburg. And, of course, Warrensburg being a whole lot bigger school, competition's a lot greater. But he made the team down there at Warrensburg. I finally, about the time we were ready to leave, we had 3 guys in the room where we were the senior year. The other 2 guys were athletes, and I just followed along. The one kid, other than the tennis player, the other kid was a 2-miler in track and was a pretty good 2-miler. Got around in the 9-minute time for the 2 miles. Now, I have to hand kids that can do that a lot of credit. Anyway, he didn't know anything about tennis, but latter part of the year, after things had slacked off pretty much, every afternoon we went to the tennis courts, and we probably chased as many balls that we hit over the backstops and out of bounds other places as we did on the courts. But we had a lot of fun, and we both enjoyed it. And I took it from there, and we played tennis. And after we graduated, this Oklahoma guy, Max was his name, he went to Kansas City to work. And Garden City was not very far from there, about 50 miles. And once in a while on a weekend, my wife and I would go down and visit him. We'd go out Saturday morning, Max and I, and we'd play all morning. I'd never beat him, but kept thinking, I'll get him one of these days. Mm-hmm. Well, I never did until he had a car accident and about wiped him out. And he was
tough way for him to lose his perch at the top of the hill there.
Yeah, it was tough, but I finally beat him a time or two, and we still went out and played tennis. And that's how we got started in tennis.
So you started a program in Windsor. Talk about how that evolved once you got to Trenton. Did you have it in your mind to start? Did they know about your previous experience, or was it just you came to a place that was ready to take that step and develop a tennis program? Same kind of scenario. People were interested in this. They knew about your experience. Tell us what courts they had. They had 3 courts in the town at that time.
Yeah, they had 3 courts, 2 at Moberly and 1 at East Side. But no, I don't think they knew anything about me, other than I was an avid tennis fan. I hounded all the people that I knew anything or had any interest, like Phil Houck and Ed Holt, and I don't know who all else was around that would play. There was once in a while somebody that would dust the dust off their racket a time or two during the season, and come out and play. But that was the extent as far as, well, not one other thing. I was in charge of the summer program the year of 67, I believe it was, summer of 67. And I made sure that tennis was included and received its fair share of time. And I made it available for adults as well as kids. And in fact, I had Betty Scott Cox just a few weeks ago remind me that how much time she spent on the courts during that summer trying to learn how to hit the tennis ball. And there were others. There was quite a fair number of adult women, not so much that participated in the summer program, but played competitively among themselves during the summer, during like Vera Cross and Karen Bailey and Miss Betty Cox, Venna Hicks.
There's something else I want you to talk about briefly, and I know the story through Alan Quilty. Told me that he gave up tennis once you moved to town because he met you in the big tournament that was held each summer, and he figured out that he was never going to beat you. There were a lot of men that played in that tournament. That was kind of a big deal, that city tournament at the end of the summer.
Yeah, the city tournament, Alan played in it. There was a guy from Galt, Jack somebody, I can't remember his last name right now, that used to come over and play. He was a pretty good player. In fact, he and I doubled up over to a Kirksville Labor Day tournament and won the doubles over there one year. Of course, we puffed up like big toads after that. We thought that was a big deal.
I see some names here. This was 1972 bracket, and you were seated first. There were guys, names that people would know: Jerry Lafferty, Dean Payton, Terry Evans, Alan Baker, Don Dalrymple, Don Lovell, Phil Houck, Phil Hoffman, Grover Seneff, and Ron McCullough. Those are some names.
Yeah. Grover and I played a lot of tennis together. We played doubles against Steve Sharp and Mike Bosley. Mike and Steve were ninth graders, my first year in town. They both seemed to catch on to tennis pretty quickly, and they seemed to enjoy it. And they came over and paired up and played Grover and I in doubles. We played a lot of tennis that way.
And kids were watching that, people like Mike taking the game on, and that seems to be a theme that I keep seeing throughout what people talk about is availability of tennis courts, availability of time, willingness to go out and hit the ball and do all that stuff is what develops tennis players. So I want to get to a couple things before the guys get here. I want to talk about, you started the programs, but they still had these three courts, and the first year that conference was established, where Kirksville, you said Kirksville, Cameron, Chillicothe, all these teams started their tennis programs around the same time, but they had men's and women's tennis in the same period of time in the spring. Now, who thought that through?
No one. No, we should have split that up and made the girls one season and the boys the other, particularly when we only had three courts. We struggled through and got by with the three courts and two teams. It worked out all right, but it would have been better if it had been split.
Now, in the early part of the 70s, what happened that got you away from those three courts, that helped you build the courts that are on the site that they play on today?
Well, several things happened, I think. Number one, there were, as you've already mentioned, several other schools that were showing interest in starting tennis as part of their competitive athletic program. And when that happened, Dr. Ray was our superintendent at that time, he asked me if I would look into getting some courts there in Trenton. And that was one thing that happened. Another was that the government was offering some funds for communities that were willing to install or build recreational activities, recreational facilities. So Dr. Ray turned it over to me. He said, see what you can do with this and see if you can make applications, see if you can get qualified to get some funds for tennis courts. We went to work on it, and I have to give my wife an awful lot of credit for this. She is the English major and probably put things together a lot better than I would have. And we got approval for 4 courts with fencing, lighting, water fountain. We had the works, and I don't think it cost the district. I never knew what it cost, but I don't think it cost the district much of anything.
Excellent. Okay, so all of a sudden we have 4 courts, and that opens up all sorts of possibilities for your program, and it really grew through that period. Now, there's going to be some guys in here, and they're going to want to talk guys tennis. So girls started at the same time as guys. So talk about, eventually you handed off the program in 75 over to Mike, and we'll talk about that further. But then you kept with the girls on the girls' side, and you had some really good teams. Talk about that girls group that you had through 75 to 78, and some of the players you had that were really pretty top notch, and I know you enjoyed coaching them.
Well, first of all, whether they won or not, they were outstanding people. And that was the thing that impressed me most. Of course, it helped a great deal that they were outstanding tennis players, too. That made them that much better. But, yeah, as you've already said, they were a great team. They seemed to support each other, and our challenge rounds every year, that was always interesting. Of course, they were only permitted to challenge the person that played ahead of them. And if you could beat that person, you got to challenge the person ahead of that person. And you could continue to play as long as you won. Well, of course, everybody would like to play number 1. Well, most everybody. Once in a while, you'd run into somebody that would like to win, and to be sure they did that, they were willing to play 3 or 4, always win. But most of them would like to play 1 or as high as they could go. So the challenge rounds was kind of an interesting time. And we had a couple of gals, Latricia Lamfer and Lori Chumley, that were good friends, but real competitive when they got on the tennis courts. They would fight tooth and nail, but Latricia always seemed to come out just a little bit ahead. And Lori just tore her up to think that she couldn't win, but she was one of the best number 2s that was around. She always won number 2 spot. That counted just as much as the number 1 win.
Well, Latricia proved out she was your first person to go to state.
Yeah.
So her talent showed, definitely. And you had some other players. I happen to know Kim Speck at that time, Kim Witten, Lisa Guy, some other people that you had. You had pretty quality team.
We had Joanna Key, who was president of State Fair Junior College for several years. I think she's retired now, but
Joanna Anderson. Yeah.
Just an outstanding bunch of people. Several of those people played college tennis. Lori played, I think, at Warrensburg, and Latricia played someplace. I'm not sure where. I think they came against each other in college. Connie played at Graceland.
Well, that tradition continues. We'll leave the rest of this with the guys, and we definitely want to talk about you and your relationship with Mike and how he continued that legacy, because he carried it on for about 35 years after you handed off. You handed it off to the right guy. That's for sure.
Well, he was the right guy for most anything.
He was indeed. You know, the room just got more full, Carl. There's more people here. You had the microphone for a little while there, and I don't know how much you're going to get it in this segment, but we'll give you a shot at it. So first of all, we want to welcome three guys that are really integral to the beginning of the Trenton tennis program and success, kind of really its first flirtation with making a name for itself. So we welcome Randall Hutchison, Stan Perry, and Mark Freese, who were cornerstone members of a great 1977 tennis team that finished 16-1 in dual matches and second in the all classes tennis district of a crazy amount, 21 teams, just 1.5 points behind St. Joe Central. So Trenton was on par with some of the biggest schools in Missouri playing tennis in 1977. So I'm going to start, you guys, because I know you love tennis. I know you have a story that started back when you were young, junior high, high school age, and even continues to today in terms of your love of the game. Randall, start us off. What was the environment like in Trenton? What made it a fertile ground for you guys to all spring up and become stalwarts in tennis in Trenton?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for doing this. This is a great thing for Carl and Trenton and tennis for us. I got my start, I don't know if I was like 12 or 13, and I was out riding my bicycle in Moberly Park like I did every day for 10 years. But there's these four what I thought were old men playing tennis doubles on the Moberly courts there. So I snuck up on the far side and laid my bike down and sat on the bench and I didn't know them, but I mean, I knew they were local guys, and again, they looked old. I sat there for quite a while and watched, and they were knocking the ball back and forth at each other, and it was super interesting. So I guess that's kind of when the bug bit or the seed was planted. I lived 3 or 4 blocks from there, and they had a little backboard, and I eventually found a wooden racket, and I spent a lot of hours on that backboard, and it wasn't very big.
Randall was one of those old guys. Is he in the room?
Oh, well, of course. It was. I found out later. Carl Carpenter, Grover Seneff, of course Mike Bosley, and Steve Sharp. Once in a while there was another sub or two, but we'll let Carl dig up some old antique names. Phil Hoffman. Vera Cross was a tennis enthusiast that I didn't realize. So
those old guys were like in their early 30s at that time, right?
I have no idea. Let's see.
Well, Bosley was still in his 20s.
Yeah, that's you're right.
He went to college.
When you're 12, everybody looks old. One of the things that I heard about you is, first of all, you live close to the courts.
Yeah.
And so you were on those courts all the time. And then I heard something, Carl, about some training tool that you had. Maybe you had a big base and I don't know, explain what that was.
Well, it was a big base, weighted base. It had a big rubber band with a tennis ball on the end of it. And I was never good enough to keep that going, but Randall could keep the ball just as low as coming back off the backboard. He would come to the office occasionally after school and get that out of the office and take it down to the gym or maybe in on the stage and hit that tennis ball back and forth. I think that helped him some.
I heard the custodian maybe wasn't so excited about you being in the hallway hitting that thing.
My mom never got on me for learning my strokes in the living room. I'd swing forehands and backhands, and there were lamps there, and she watched, and she didn't say a word, and I never broke anything.
Mark, talk about your kind of first experiences with tennis and what grabbed you about it.
I think it was just Parks and Rec. They had built the 4 new courts at the high school. They were very nice courts. And I think it was Bosley that ran the summer program. Yeah, I was in 8th grade, I was going to the golf course a lot because Billy Davidson was the golf coach, and I liked him. And then Mike Bosley became his first year of teaching. He was my 9th grade science teacher. So he kind of ushered me toward the tennis side. So I went out for tennis in high school, but I didn't play a lot before high school.
Stan, how about you?
My experience was, again, Parks and Rec. Back then, we only had the 2 courts over at Moberly Park, but we kind of had a pattern. We had a really good summer rec program of baseball, and the Moberly Park was just hop step from the tennis courts. So whenever we had practice in the mornings, I'd go by there and I'd see Steve Sharp and Carl and Bosley and everybody playing, and it just became part of the Parks and Rec deal. So I signed up the same time as, people like Latricia Lanfer and some other people my age, and we just started playing as kids through the Parks and Rec. I was probably 12 when I started that. We had, for the Parks and Rec, we traveled to other towns. Our Parks and Rec kids played Chillicothe, or played Kirksville kids or whatever, and that was a great time.
Mike coached you. What kind of coach was Mike? What was it about him as a coach that was fun? What did he teach you specifically about how to play the game?
Well, he was, very personable. I liked him. Yeah, we were all, attracted to him as far as, somebody wanted to be around. I think Mike was kind of learning the game at kind of the same time we were. So I think I can still remember his phone number. I'd call him and go, and I don't remember either of these 2 guys' phone number, but call him and he would, pretty much always, if he could, go out and hit. So these were my 3, my 3 hitting people were Randall, Stan, and Mike. Go out a couple times a week and kind of figure it out together pretty much.
Excellent. Stan?
Well, I would agree with that. It was really we just played a lot. It wasn't overly technical. It wasn't like we were, fine tuning things like you'd see in some of the kids in the academies now. We just played and learned to play. I think for me, for Bosley, he was always so fun to be around, but he was very patient. If he was upset at you, he'd let you know you're upset, but it wasn't like he was going to go crazy or anything. But he was very patient, and he just made it fun for everybody.
Great. Randall, you played for both Carl and Mike. Talk about that.
Jumping back to teaching techniques or drills, I remember Carl one time early on, him and I were on the court at Moberly, and he had dug out a couple towels, white towels, like bath towels or sport towels, and laid in the back corners of the baseline. And he would serve to me, and he wanted me, those were targets. He wanted me to hit the ball either cross court, down the line, do something with it, not just get it back, place it. And I thought he was a genius. So, and then 2, at one point, he gave me, or let me borrow, a Wilson T2000. That was the big thing back then, Jimmy Connor's racket, and I was just flabbergasted. So that was way cool. Now, Mark, you guys and Stan, you were right. Bosley wouldn't teach you how to hit topspin or a slice or this or that, but he would spend hours, weeks, days, months, years with us on the court, just thousands of balls, and that doesn't hurt. That doesn't hurt your game. So,
you guys got to high school, and when did you realize you kind of had something there? You had enough players, enough depth, enough. How many people were going out for tennis at that time?
Oh, gosh. We even had a JV team that probably had 10 or 12 kids in it. So at that time, we didn't play. It's a format a little different than it is now, but we had 1 through 6 in singles, and then we had 6 through 12, but they played doubles. So that's how the varsity was. So we had 12 people on varsity, and then there was a whole different JV team. So it was, aside from just us traveling in certain tournaments, we all traveled together. So, we had a bus full. That's what made it fun. For us, for me personally, was during challenge matches, as a freshman, trying to challenge your way up into the lineup and get into the lineup, and you start seeing, how things were stacking up. And to me, that was one of those moments where you're going, I don't know how many people are going to beat us out there. And we had a lot of good teams that we played against for over the years, but we stacked up right against most everybody.
I'm going to jump in on that for 1 second. challenges. Ninth grade, we were still in Carl's house, his school. Basketball wasn't for me. I knew I'd be in some sport. Baseball I was pretty good about, but there wasn't a high school team. So I thought, I found out that we could go out as freshmen, ninth graders, for the high school team. I was tickled to death. And so challenge matches, Bosley, let you play somebody 3 or 4 times, just not once. But Chris Hoffman ended up being number 6 on the varsity team, and I was 7. I was crushed. I was the P word. It tore me up. So from that point on, that next year, I bet I hit 300 days that year, next summer, going up. So my sophomore year, I think I went up to number 2 on the team. So
that's a big jump. That's a big jump. I think Chris admits to that. He's admitted, he said he could beat you as a freshman, but he couldn't beat you after that. So
I tell you something else. I mean, we go back to the Parks and Rec, but as Carl will remember, and I think Mark, maybe even his mom kept scraps of some of them, but we would have summer tournaments where there were a lot of adults. I mean, guys, Carl would play, Phil Houck would play, Steve Sharp would play, Mike Arbuckle would play. I mean, there were a lot of people that played, and when we got old enough to get into those tournaments, it was a fun challenge for us. I contribute as much of our success to all the adults that were willing to play against kids as opposed to just going, that's okay, we're going to do our own thing.
It seems to me, as I was reading the Trenton microfiche collection, you see some of this stuff that's just pre-internet, guys. These stories we bring in the podcast are a little bit pre-internet sometimes. Yeah. It was clear that there were a lot of adults that played tennis. Carl, what did you see in these guys as they were young guys coming through your junior high, and then as they moved into tennis? What did you see in their commitment to it and their abilities?
Well, the thing that I liked about it was that they've all talked about time on the courts. That was the thing that I fought the hardest. The first boys team that I had, I couldn't get them on the courts other than just practice time. You're not ever going to be a tennis player until you're willing to start spending some time on the court. And it doesn't matter, well, I won't say it doesn't matter at all, but it really doesn't matter so much whether you win or lose. It's the time on the court that makes the difference. And these guys will all express that very same thing in different ways. Randall's interested in playing even with the rubber band thing, and these guys in the rec program and coming out and playing. Mike Bosley told me one time, he said, Carl, I don't think I've ever called you to come out and play tennis when you turned me down. And I made that pretty much a practice. If a kid called me to play tennis, it was going to have to be pretty important for anything for me to tell him, no, I couldn't come, because I wanted to see those kids on the courts as much as, and it shows in the way I ran the girls program. We ran a quadrangular tournament on Saturday where we had 4 teams. Every team, every player played 3 matches in one day. And another thing we did, I don't know of anybody else that did it, we planned a weekend trip. We'd go to the town where the guys were playing football. Let's say Cameron. We'd play Cameron girls at 4 o'clock. Football would be 7 or 7:30. We'd be through. We'd watch the football game. We'd spend the night in the motel. Saturday morning, 10:30, we'd be on the court at Lexington. We'd play a match there. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, we'd be on the court at Excelsior Spring, and we'd play a match there.
That's how you get better.
That's getting time on the courts. The only way you're going to improve, in my opinion.
Now, who were some of the players that caught your idea and maybe had a little style that you liked?
Well, I was saying, too, jumping back and around, we used to, all the major tournaments, the 4 Grand Slams, I'd go to Bosley's house, Paris's house, by the entrance to the park. Him and I would sit and watch TV on this 12-inch black and white TV with foil on the antennas and talk tennis and watch tennis. And I learned a lot from watching Rod Laver. learned a lot from Ken Rosewall. That slice backhand he had is just incredible. Ely Nastasi, he was a wild man. He was the McEnroe before McEnroe. And
How about you?
Yeah, Bjorn Borg and John McEnroe, those were kind of our era. And yeah, we try to emulate them a little bit. We couldn't hit the top spin that Borg hit, but we were more hit it like McEnroe and try to get into the net. And yeah, those were two back in the day that I remember.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. I mean, to me, when McEnroe became McEnroe, it got a lot of people's attention, and tennis was at the height. Whether you liked him or whether you didn't, you still appreciated how he played tennis. And
Carl, you've talked about catching the wave of interest in tennis. It really was at its biggest in the 70s. Great players in the earlier era, Arthur Ashe and Stan Smith. I'm wearing my Stan Smiths today, by the way, guys. That's the closest I can get to actual tennis heritage. So who were some of the players that you watched and enjoyed?
Well, I think Roger Federer is the ideal as far as tennis playing is concerned. He is the example for all of us, in my opinion. There's more to the game than just the actual playing, and I think Federer was the example of about anything that you wanted to talk about.
Federer's a class act. I read a book about him the other day, ongoing book, and some of the guy writing the book, though, he goes, I've interviewed Federer several times, and it looks like he shaves his face 7 times a day. He goes, I've never seen anything like it. But the 70s, too, it was booming all over the world.
Yes.
Bobby Riggs and Billie Jean King in the Battle of the Sexes in 1975, that lit the world up. We were blessed by, I forget the organization, but it was the men's pro team tennis type thing. World team tennis. Yeah. It was at Municipal Auditorium every year. We would go see Arthur Ashe, Smith and Lutz.
Feedback and Ocker.
Yeah.
We got rained out one year, districts. I don't remember. I think you'd already graduated and you were maybe at Baker at the time, and I'm not sure if, Mark, you were still there, but it may have been my senior year, but we were at districts and we got rained out, and there was an event at Municipal Auditorium, and Bosley goes, we're rained out for the day. Let's go watch tennis. And we drove down to Kansas City, and we got there early. It was just us and the team. There was no one else in the whole place. It was just us and the team. And Feebach and Ocker and Stan Smith and Bob Lutz, and they were just out there messing around, and they started throwing up overheads. And we're all sitting on the sideline, wide-eyed, looking at these pros and how hard they're hitting. It's unbelievable. And about that time, Bob Lutz was getting an overhead, and he smashed it right over our heads, and we just scattered we were like something I'll never forget.
Well, Roscoe Tanner was one of those. He
was big, yeah.
Big serve.
Okay, guys, we're going to drag in one of your tennis mates. Chris Hoffman has joined us, and I'm supposed to ask you how you and Stan played together as a doubles team.
Bosley paired us together, and Stanley's left-handed, I'm right-handed, and we could never figure out who was supposed to get the one going down the center of the court. So that was a problem.
That was a problem. Okay. So Chris was on this team in 77, and we already Randall already discussed how disgusted, actually, he was that he couldn't beat you as a freshman and knock you out of the number 6 position. And that made him work really, really hard. And he came back the next year as a number 2. But you were following up the chain there, and you guys had a great team. We're heading into districts, and you guys have won like 14 dual matches that year, and you're going into a 21-team district. Now, Chris, honestly, what were your expectations going into that tournament? Did you guys feel like you had a chance to win that, or you just wanted to show well? What was kind of the feeling?
Honestly, I don't know how Hutch and Freeze were, but I mean, I think we just wanted to compete. We had a really successful season, but I don't know that we realized that we were maybe as good as we were. And everybody just went that day to play their best tennis. And we had a really good day, and we showed a lot of people that, a smaller school could compete with the big schools.
Mark?
Well, I remember the years before we'd go to districts, and you would see some really good players out of like Winnetonka or Oak Park, Park Hill, Liberty, then you have Chillicothe, Maryville, all the St. Joe schools. I remember how good, the players that got to the finals were. So I was not thinking that we were in that category, quite honestly. And then we got there and we did pretty well.
Stan?
No, I would agree with that. I would agree with Chris because, we knew we had a good team, but we hadn't actually played against a lot of the teams that were there, especially the bigger schools. We had no experience really against them. And, at districts, typically now you'd see it all at one event. Well, they scattered us all over town. So, I played singles, so I went one area and Brian Bell played, so he went somewhere else. And then Steve, my brother, and Chris played doubles, so they may have played where they were. So we really didn't have any idea how each person was doing. There was no cell phones.
Sense of momentum. You were just in your match and trying to win points in your...
Yeah, we had no idea. So then when we finally got together and I came back, I lost to David May, I forget what, maybe round of 8, something like that. And then when we got back to there, I knew these guys were in the semis and I knew who they were playing against and oh my gosh, this is crazy. Then we started stacking up points and saying, wow, we've got a shot at this.
We've got a shot. What do you remember about that day, Randall?
It was a good, crazy day. Mark and I ended up in the semis. Heckman and Waris. What school were they from? LeBlond. Like you just said, the other courts matches were over and there was quite a gallery along the side of our court. And do you remember scores? Did we split sets?
I don't remember scores. I don't remember.
Yeah. But it was close. We played well, and I do remember one little incident in the match. I don't know what I was thinking. I was back behind the baseline, and one of them hit a wild, crazy ball that was coming right towards me. And I caught it in the air with my hand. And that is, you can't do that.
That was against the Filberts. Oh, and I actually talked to them about it about a month ago.
I thought it was...
And they were like, yeah, we were a little crazy back then. It got pretty intense. But
well, the Filberts waxed.
By rule, they were right. You shouldn't have caught the ball out of the air.
Well, but the crowd all went, oh. And I swung my hand around in a bad gesture towards the whole crowd, and they got really quiet. And so we proceeded to get our butts kicked. I don't know what the score was, 0-2 or 2-1, but they were twin brothers. One was left-handed, one was right-handed, and they know which side they like. The forehands go in the middle. So we finished second district, and that qualified us for state, which we were the first team to ever do that.
At that time, there were 3 matches on the court, and if we would have won any one of the 3 matches, if it would have went our way, we would have actually won districts. It was Randall and I playing the Filberts for the doubles, Steve and Chris playing for third, and both of those matches didn't go our way and weren't terribly close. But David May was playing a guy by the name of Ned Beavers. David was from Maryville and Ned was from St. Joe Central. So St. Joe Central had to win that match, or if David May won, I think we would have won districts then too. So we were very close at just, a point or two away. That match did go 3 sets also. It was a very close match because we were done with ours, but we were watching that one. Just
really tuned in. Chris, what do you remember about that day?
Well, so Bosley, the week before district, decided that Steve Perry, Stan's brother, and I were going to play doubles, and we hadn't played together all year. But we got there that morning, and we won our first match, and we were playing pretty well together. We just kind of meshed pretty well. So we won 3, and all of a sudden we got both Trenton double teams are in the top 4, and Steve was running out of steam a little bit on me, but we were outmatched probably. We'd have had a little better day. We might have been able to win third, but anyway, we were grateful to be where we were, and it was just a great day.
That must have been an exciting day to know that you were in the hunt and you finished second out of 21 teams. I would suggest 17 of them were bigger schools than you guys?
There were a lot of them, yeah, but The thing I remember after that day was we were on the news. St. Joe had us on the news. We actually saw some video and I forget what it was. We
Kick you too.
Yeah.
One little thing I want to jump back to that match that I embarrassed Bosley horribly with. Later, I found out that my future college coach was in the crowd scouting people, and I guess he thought I had passion. He brought me to the Baker team.
So who became the rivals? Who were the teams? Talk about those rivalries.
I feel like we had a great conference. I mean, I know Mark and I were talking about it on the way over that we dropped out of the conference, but Kirksville had a really good team. Marshall had a really good team. Chillicothe had a challenging team. Pretty much that was Columbia Rockbridge, yeah. But I mean, those schools were they matched up against us really, really well. So I mean, we might have beat most everybody that year, but we didn't walk away with. I mean, it was close.
Yeah, Marshall was it? They were good.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the Marshall match. So Jeff. So we play. And maybe you guys have already talked about this, but districts were over, and so it was a little anticlimactic. But we go to Marshall the next week to play a duel with them. Well, we dropped out of the conference the year prior, so we didn't have any conference games. And Marshall was one of those teams that we matched up, with Brookfield tournament, some other tournaments. And anyway, we go down there and we beat them 5-4. And they had won their district, and they had won the NCMC conference. And, it was really a pretty big deal now that you think about it. And really later in life, I hadn't really thought about it, but I asked Bosley, I said, why the heck did we go play Marshall after this? Basically, the season was over other than Hutch and Freeze were going to state. And he goes, I just knew that you guys were going to have a good year. And I just wanted you to know that if you'd have been in the conference, you probably would have won it. I just wanted you guys to realize how special a team you had. And I didn't really think about that till I was older. But that's exactly why he had us do that. Outstanding.
Well, Chris, thank you for joining us for a little bit of this conversation. Say goodbye to your fellow tennis mates.
Chris.
See you, Chris.
Take care, buddy.
Don't let him tell you too many lies, okay? All right.
I'm not sure I'll be able to tell which ones are the lies and which ones are the truth, but lies might be the most entertaining part.
There you go. All right. We'll see you guys.
Thank you. Okay, guys. What did you do with tennis in the next phase of your life or even up to today? Whatever piece of that you want to put a pin in. Randall, you start us off.
Well, I went to Baker. I wasn't ready for college, but couldn't turn down a good tennis team. Coach Eyrick really had a successful run for 10 or 15 years. Baker, in their glory days, were, I think, in the top 10 of the NAI year after year. So that was neat. Learned a lot of good habits and bad habits. But wanted to be a PE teacher, I thought. And 2 years at Baker, and then I simply started teaching tennis at Meadowbrook Country Club, an outdoor club, summer club. Come back to Trenton and work for a winter or two at Martinstown and Country, and go back. And Mark joined me a couple of years later as an assistant, and I think I did that about 5 years. But got my name around town, and the indoor jobs were hard to get because they were good to get. Year-round, better money, this and that. So finally got teaching at a couple. Longest best stint I had at the indoor club was Indian Creek Racket Club at 107th and College in Overland Park. I think I taught 7 days a week for 7 years because your big days are weekends. And so I probably had a day or two off, but that's quite a run.
That is.
And one claim to fame about that club was it was owned by Tennis Corporation of America out of Chicago, so they had some clubs all over. But Larry Funk was the general manager. He brought in Billie Jean King to do a day's seminar, if you will, and sign autographs and this and that. So we had there was an exhibition match that night, and I got to play doubles with Billie Jean. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I wasn't starstruck or anything, but I wish I would have got a photo or something. But it was one of my highlights.
Absolutely.
I went on and played 4 years at Central Missouri State University. We were okay. I played usually 2 or 3 singles, number 1 doubles. 1 year we got second in conference. We were in conference with Missouri State and Southeast Missouri State and Truman and Northwest Missouri State. So it was good tennis. After that, I did teach a little bit indoor or at Meadowbrook. I didn't play a lot of tennis from till I was about 35. Kind of took, I was coaching basketball, teaching high school, coaching basketball. So that took a lot of time. But then I've played USTA for the last 30 years, still playing 2 or 3 leagues. Well, usually 1 league at a time, but over the course of a year, playing 55 and over, 40 and over, and even the 18 and overs. And, it's I've been able to meet a lot of people from all over the world playing. We've got a good group that we play with in town, and usually we'll go on and qualify and sometimes go to nationals. But in tennis, you meet people from South Africa or England, or my daughter played college tennis, India, Russia, Mexico, Colombia, Argentina. It's such a world sport. So I enjoy it. I still play, and still trying to be competitive, and usually playing against younger people, but that's okay.
Excellent. Stan?
Yeah, I really kind of just played a little bit, played maybe some summer tournaments, a few with Mark, and hit with the guys. But I really didn't start playing a lot again until we moved to Tulsa. We moved to Oklahoma in 2004. There was a club that we joined. It was a golf club and a tennis club. So I started playing a little bit more, and then my son started playing. And whenever my son started playing, then he was getting instruction. And that was really kind of when I started. I felt like I was getting better at that time, as good as I was ever playing, because I was wanting to make sure that I knew where he was and to make him better, and hit a lot, did a lot of drills, and played a lot of USTA at that time. And Tulsa's a really good tennis community, A lot of good high-level players came out of there. And we had some good teams. We would play against Mark's team, usually at districts, to see who went to nationals and that sort of thing. So we had some moderate success. We went to nationals probably 7 or 8 times. We won it 1 year in 9-0 mixed. And then I came back here and played for Mark's team, and we went to nationals that year, and that was probably the last year I started playing tennis. Just sore shoulder, sore elbow, knees.
You found a sport adjacent to tennis.
That's right. That's right.
Stan's quite an accomplished pickleball player at a national level, champion level. That's caught fire.
Yeah, my son was working at a place that was really close to the First Chicken and Pickle down in North Kansas City. And he said, "Dad, the restaurant's not open yet, but there's this place called Chicken and Pickle, pickleball." And I'd never heard of pickleball. So I just went down there and played with them. And I thought, you know what, I could probably do this for a while and not get hurt. But the thing I liked about pickleball, as much as transitioning from tennis to pickleball was pretty transitional, but I felt like it was something that I could probably get better at. So it really gave me a nice little challenge, and that was what made it fun. So at some point, you don't get any better, but you try and hang on. But I knew that when I first started, I felt like I could continue to get better.
That's great. That's great. Carl, what's the legacy about tennis, and what do you take appreciation from when you see the way that they continue to love the game and play the game in their later years, but also they came back and gave to the community? The court being named after you and Mike. What's your takeaway from all these years and you playing tennis with Mike into your 70s?
Well, I'm very appreciative, of course. We wouldn't have accomplished the things we accomplished in Trenton with tennis without a group effort that was put into it. It wasn't one person by any means. I have thought that I owed a great deal to tennis, and I appreciate other people coming along and enjoying it as much as I have enjoyed it. And it looks like it's in good hands when you've got a bunch of younger guys coming along that are as interested, seem to be as interested as these guys are. And they've even got offspring that show great interest in it. So Nothing I could say other than it's good things.
You know, I listened to the dedication ceremony, and you guys did a good job. And then Carl spoke at the end, and he let Mike speak first, which he admitted was a mistake. You said that was a mistake. Let Mike get the microphone first. But Mike and I talked before he gave that speech about what he might talk about, and the word he used was family. He talked about the tennis family, that time you spend on the court makes you a better player, but it also makes you brothers, and it makes you part of a tennis family. And I thought that was on point.
Well, Mark made that point too. I was impressed early. I knew a guy from Independence, that guy's name was Coberly, that was playing tennis at 70, 75 years old and doing well. And I was only a teenager at that time. And I thought, man, if I could play something and enjoy it as much as this guy seems to be enjoying it, it would sure be worth learning how and spending some time with it. And Mark talks about all the different people that you meet. You meet people in the tennis world, I think, more differently than you do in any other area.
Guys, this has been a lot of fun. Good people doing good things in the world, and tennis is a big part of that. Loved hearing the stories and appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you.
I want to thank all the guys for coming in. I really enjoyed talking with Randall, with Stan, with Mark. Now, I want to go back to two cuts actually. First one is from Carl Carpenter, talking about kind of his philosophy of what he was trying to accomplish and what he considered to be important in the game of tennis. And the second one is Mike Bosley's voice, and you're going to hear Mike talking about what tennis means to him and the people that played it.
And winning is important. I want you to be sure. I want to be sure you understand that. But I've always thought that maybe just as important was, did I play my last match any better than the one some time ago, previously? Whether you won or lost, if you can say you did that, you were a winner.
Just a couple more things. I would say that through all the practice sessions, match play, I think I'm most grateful for all the friendships that have been formed over the years. I see these guys there once in a while, and they actually are just, you hear the Royals and the Chiefs and the MU Tigers talk about family. We just got a lot of family members that have played tennis.
Kind of says it all, really, doesn't it? Man, I love Mike and Carl as well. We miss Mike, really do.
We sure do. My wife played for Mike. My brothers-in-law played for Mike, and he instilled in them a love for tennis. My wife went on to coach tennis after Boz, took over the girls program there. Big shoes to fill, but she really enjoyed it, had some success there. Then our son got to play tennis. Didn't know that was really going to happen with baseball coming in to Trenton about that time, but my wife's love for tennis kind of trickled to our son, and he was one of the members of his tennis team that broke the 30-year streak of sending a male tennis player to state. To see that come full circle with my wife and my son, knowing the tradition of boys tennis in Trenton and tennis in general was great, and it all came from the love of tennis of these two gentlemen.
There's other tennis stories to tell, and we will tell some of those stories in the future, but this was a good one tonight. Thank KTTN for allowing us to excerpt and just hear the voices of those guys and their love for the game. And I just want to thank all our listeners at Show Me Sports Legacies.